Have you ever had a secret so deep you thought it was buried forever? A past you run from, only to have it reappear in the most terrifying way imaginable? This is a story about a woman who discovered her worst enemy wasn't just her mother-in-law. It was the devastating truth her mother-in-law was about to unleash. A truth that could destroy everything she had ever loved. Prepare yourself, because this family's perfect facade is about to shatter into a million pieces. Chloe was a successful lawyer, a woman who had built a fortress around her heart. After a traumatic past and a devastating betrayal by her first love, she found an unexpected peace with Liam, a kind and steady auto mechanic. He was the calm to her storm. They had a life in the quiet suburbs of Chicago with 2 beautiful children, 7-year-old Leo, Chloe's son from before, and their 3-year-old daughter Maya. But their peace was fragile, constantly threatened by Liam's mother, Eleanor. Eleanor, a woman of sharp words and colder glares, had despised Chloe from day one. She saw Chloe as an unworthy opportunist who had trapped her simple son. What Chloe didn't know was that Eleanor's hatred was rooted in a secret Chloe herself had buried, a secret connecting her son, Leo, to Eleanor's other, more favoured son, Ryan, a man Chloe believed she would never see again. The hum of the minivan's engine was a low growl of anxiety in Chloe's ears. Each mile closer to her suburban home felt like a step toward a cliff's edge. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her jaw tight. Liam's text message from an hour ago glowed on the screen, a beacon of doom. Mom's on her way. She's staying for the weekend. A weekend. 48 hours. It sounded like a prison sentence. She pictured Eleanor's perfectly coiffed silver hair, the way her lips would purse in disapproval at the sight of a dust bunny, the critical scan of her eyes that made Chloe feel like a teenager caught sneaking out. She had spent 5 years trying to win this woman over, 5 years of forced smiles and carefully chosen gifts, all for nothing. The resentment was a bitter pill she was forced to swallow again and again. Today, the pill felt lodged in her throat, choking her. She pulled into the driveway, the crunch of gravel under the tyres sounding unnaturally loud. She took a deep breath, the air smelling of freshly cut grass and impending conflict. Inside, Liam was pacing in the living room, running a hand through his hair. He looked trapped. "Chloe, I told you, it's just for a couple of days," he started, his voice already defensive. "A couple of days is too many, Liam. When are you going to stop letting her walk all over us?" Chloe's voice was low but sharp with years of frustration. "What do you want me to do? She's my mother. You two just need to stop fighting. It's impossible being stuck in the middle." He threw his hands up in a gesture of surrender, a move he always made when the conversation got too hard. It meant the discussion was over. But for Chloe, the war was just beginning. She wasn't just fighting for her peace of mind anymore. She was fighting for her home. As Liam retreated to the garage, his sanctuary of grease and steel, Chloe's mind reeled back 8 years, back to a different man, a man named Ryan. He was everything she thought she wanted. He was charming, ambitious, with eyes that promised a future as bright and dazzling as the Chicago skyline from his high-rise apartment. He had swept into her life like a summer storm, all passion and intensity. He quoted poetry, remembered the name of her favourite obscure band, and made her feel like the only woman in the world. He was the complete opposite of her own father, a man whose love was measured in empty bottles and broken promises. With Ryan, she had let her guard down for the first time. She had allowed herself to fall, completely and recklessly, believing he would be there to catch her. The memory was so vivid it felt like a ghost in her own kitchen. The ghost of that memory always ended in the same place, a cold, sterile bathroom, a positive pregnancy test clutched in her trembling hand. She remembered the rush of fear and a surprising, fierce surge of joy. She had rushed to his apartment, a small, gift-wrapped box in her hands, to tell him the news. She imagined his surprise, his embrace, the start of their new life. Instead, his handsome face had twisted into a mask of disgust. "I hope this is a joke," he'd snarled, throwing the box onto his marble countertop. His words were like shards of ice. You really think I want this? A kid? With you? The man she loved had vanished, replaced by a cruel, cold stranger. The shock was so profound, it had stolen the air from her lungs, leaving her gasping in the suffocating silence of his expensive, empty apartment. "I'm married, you idiot," he had spat, the words designed to inflict maximum damage. "Did you really think this was going anywhere? I'll pay for the procedure. After that, you disappear from my life, and from my family's life." That was the final blow. He had a family, a wife, their entire relationship, the late-night talks, the whispered promises. It had all been a lie. Numb, she found a strength she didn't know she possessed. She refused his money, refused his demand. A week later, in a lawyer's office that smelled of lemon polish and deceit, they signed an agreement. A piece of paper that stated he, Ryan, relinquished all paternal rights and responsibilities, and in return, she would never reveal his identity. He had signed it with a flick of his expensive pen, a man swatting away a minor inconvenience. He had walked away without a backward glance, leaving her to build a life from the wreckage he had created. Now standing in her sunny, toy-strewn living room, that past felt like another lifetime. Her life wasn't a high-rise apartment. It was a two-story home with a mortgage. Her partner wasn't a ruthless corporate climber. He was a man who smelled of motor oil and had a gentle touch. Liam had known about Leo from their very first date. He hadn't flinched. He had leaned in, showing a genuine interest in her son, in her life. He had loved Leo as his own from the moment the little boy, hesitant at first, had finally placed his small hand in Liam's. Their daughter Maya, with Liam's sandy hair and Chloe's determined eyes, had completed their family. It was a good life, a real life, a life Eleanor was determined to poison with her constant disapproval, her thinly veiled insults about Chloe's past and Leo's parentage. Chloe just wished she knew why the hatred ran so deep. Chloe tried to push it all down as she prepared dinner. The familiar ritual of chopping vegetables usually calmed her, but tonight, every slice of the knife felt like an act of aggression. The doorbell rang, a shrill, demanding sound that cut through the house. "Eleanor!" Chloe wiped her hands on a towel, plastered on a smile that felt like a cheap mask, and opened the door. Eleanor swept in on a cloud of expensive perfume and silent judgment. She offered a cheek for a kiss that was as dry and cold as paper. Her eyes immediately began their critical survey of the house. "Liam tells me you're working late hours these days," she began, her tone implying accusation, not inquiry. "Must be hard to find time for the children." It was the opening salvo in a battle Chloe was too tired to fight. She simply nodded and returned to the kitchen, feeling Eleanor's eyes on her back like a physical weight. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed and an agonizingly silent dinner was over, Chloe tried to retreat to her bedroom with a book. She needed to escape to build a wall of words around herself. But the low murmur of voices from the living room drew her in. Liam and his mother were talking. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but as she passed the doorway, she heard her name. Then she heard Leo's name. Curiosity, sharp and painful, made her stop. She pressed herself against the wall in the dimly lit hallway, her heart beginning to pound a frantic, heavy rhythm against her ribs. The scent of Eleanor's perfume seemed to hang in the air, thick and cloying. She held her breath, straining to hear the words that she knew, instinctively, were going to change her life forever. "I'm telling you, Liam, it's the perfect solution." Eleanor's voice was a conspiratorial whisper, sharp and venomous. "Ryan and Isabella can't have children. They want to adopt. And here is a child, his own flesh and blood. Your Chloe tricked him, you know. She knew he was married. She tried to ruin his life for money." A wave of dizziness washed over Chloe. Ryan. She was talking about Ryan. Her Ryan was Liam's brother? The successful, perfect older brother who lived overseas, the one Eleanor never stopped praising. The world tilted on its axis. The pieces of a puzzle she never knew existed slammed into place with brutal force. The shared last name she dismissed as a coincidence. Eleanor's immediate and visceral hatred of her. It all made a horrifying, sickening kind of sense. Chloe leaned against the wall, her legs threatening to give out. She could barely process one revelation before the next one hit her. "We just need to prove she's an unfit mother," Eleanor continued, her voice dripping with cold calculation. "It won't be hard. She works too much, leaves the kids with her mother all the time. A little money in the right hands, a few convincing stories. We can get a DNA test to prove Ryan's paternity. We take Leo, Ryan gets his heir, Isabella gets her baby, and you're finally free of that woman and her baggage. We can give Leo a life you never could." Chloe felt a primal scream building in her chest. They were talking about her son. Her, Leo. Not as a person, but as a prize to be won. A commodity to be traded. They were planning to steal her child. The thought was so monstrous it was surreal. This wasn't happening. She heard Liam's hesitant voice, a weak dam against his mother's tidal wave of malice. "Mom, stop! You can't just take a child. Chloe is a good mother." "A good mother?" Eleanor scoffed, the sound like breaking glass. "Don't be a fool, Liam. She's a snake who trapped you. This is what's best for everyone, especially the boy. You will help us. You'll testify in court. You'll say she was neglectful. You'll say she drank, that she hit him. I'll write down exactly what you need to say." The sheer evil of the plan was breathtaking. Chloe's vision swam. For years this woman had been chipping away at her life, her marriage, her confidence. Now she was coming for her son. The terror that had frozen her in place instantly melted away, replaced by a white-hot rage that was purer and stronger than anything she had ever felt in her life. She didn't storm into the room. She walked. Each step was deliberate, silent. She appeared in the doorway like an avenging angel, her face pale, her eyes blazing. The smile was gone. The mask was gone. All that was left was a mother's fury. Liam and Eleanor looked up, their faces a mixture of shock and guilt. Liam's jaw dropped. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, but a flicker of fear danced in their depths. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Time seemed to slow down. Chloe's gaze was fixed on Eleanor, a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Get out," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. "Get out of my house, now!" Eleanor, recovering quickly, rose to her feet, bristling with indignation. "How dare you speak to me that way in my son's house? This is my house too!" Chloe's voice cracked like a whip. "And you are no longer welcome in it. You will not come near my son. You will not come near my family. If I ever see you again, I will call the police. I will get a restraining order. Do you understand me?" She took a step forward and Eleanor involuntarily took a step back. Chloe grabbed the older woman's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Get out!" She practically dragged the sputtering Eleanor to the front door, ignoring Liam, who stood frozen, paralysed by the collision of the two worlds he had tried so desperately to keep separate. Chloe swung the door open and shoved her mother-in-law onto the porch. "And don't you ever come back." She slammed the door, the sound echoing through the silent house. She leaned her forehead against the cool wood, her body trembling with adrenaline and rage. The tears came then, hot and furious, not tears of sadness, but of violation, of a battle she had just won, and a war she knew was just beginning. She turned to face her husband. He looked at her, his face a canvas of confusion, fear, and shame. "Chloe, he stammered. "You have a choice to make, Liam," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "Right now, her or us. There is no middle ground anymore. You either stand with me and protect our family, or you walk out that door with her and you never come back. Choose." The ultimatum hung in the air between them, heavy and unbreakable. His decision in that moment would define the rest of their lives. Miles away, in a sleek, minimalist condo overlooking Lake Michigan, Isabella traced the rim of her wineglass. The silence in their home was a living entity, vast and empty. Ryan was on his laptop, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of the screen. Completely absorbed in his work, he was physically present, but emotionally, he was 1,000 miles away. For years, her life had been a series of appointments. Fertility specialists, acupuncturists, nutritionists, each one a new hope that inevitably ended in disappointment. The ache for a child was a hollow space inside her that nothing could fill. Not the designer clothes, not the exotic vacations, not her husband's detached affection. Ryan was against adoption. He didn't want the complications of a child that wasn't his. His refusal was just another wall between them, in a house already full of them. Frustrated and lonely, Isabella had started volunteering. She'd found a local community centre with a programme for underprivileged children. She spent her afternoons reading stories and helping with arts and crafts. It was the only place she felt truly alive, surrounded by the chaotic, joyful energy of children. One afternoon, she saw them. A woman with a kind face and two beautiful children, a boy and a girl, laughing as they built a wobbly tower of blocks. There was something so natural, so warm about their little family unit. Isabella felt a pang of envy so sharp, it was a physical pain. She watched them for a while, a voyeur of the happiness she so desperately craved. The little boy looked up and his eyes met hers. He had dark hair, a mischievous smile, and eyes that were startlingly familiar. She couldn't place it at first. She felt a strange sense of déjà vu as she watched him play. It was in the way he tilted his head when he was concentrating, the shape of his smile. Later, as the mother was gathering their things to leave, Isabella approached them, compelled by a force she didn't understand. "You have a beautiful family," she said, the words feeling inadequate. The mother, Chloe, thanked her. They exchanged a few pleasantries. Then the boy's father arrived to meet them. It was Liam, Ryan's brother. Isabella had only seen him in photos, but she recognised him instantly. And in that moment, seeing Liam next to the boy, the puzzle pieces clicked into place. The boy didn't look like Liam. He looked like a perfect miniature version of her husband, Ryan. The realisation hit her like a punch to the gut. The familiar eyes, the smile. It was Ryan. Isabella went home in a daze. The world had tilted, and she was struggling to find her footing. She looked at her husband that night, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. How many other secrets was he hiding behind his charming smile? The next day, armed with a false pretense of wanting to finally connect with his family, she found Chloe's address. She needed to know the truth no matter how ugly it was. She found Chloe in her garden, pulling weeds with a vengeance. Isabella took a deep breath and walked up the stone path. "Chloe, I'm Isabella, Ryan's wife," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. The look on her face told Isabella everything. The rumours, the secret, the child, it was all true. What followed was a conversation that stripped away years of lies. They sat on the back porch, a fragile truce forming between them, as Chloe, with Liam by her side, told her everything. She told Isabella about the whirlwind romance, the crushing betrayal, the legal agreement, and then she told her about Eleanor's monstrous plan to steal Leo. Isabella listened, her horror growing with every word. The woman she knew as a kind, doting mother-in-law was a manipulative monster. The man she had married was a cruel, selfish liar. Her perfect life was a sham, built on the pain of another woman. Tears streamed down her face, not of self-pity, but of shame and a shared, feminine rage. She wasn't Chloe's rival. She was another one of his victims. "He's not getting him," Isabella said, her voice thick with emotion, but hard as steel. "Eleanor is not getting him. They will have to go through me." At that moment, an alliance was forged, not just between two women scorned, but between two mothers, one by blood, one by a desperate, aching desire. They were on the same side, a united front against the storm that was coming for them. The conversation was interrupted by the furious sound of a car screeching to a halt in the driveway. Ryan. He stormed up to the porch, his face a thunderous mask of panic and fury. He had clearly realised where Isabella had gone. Isabella, what are you doing? Get in the car, he commanded, not even looking at his brother or Chloe. He was a king whose castle was crumbling, desperately trying to regain control. Isabella stood up, her small frame radiating a newfound strength. No, Ryan, I'm not going anywhere with you. I know everything. The colour drained from his face. He looked from Isabella's resolute face to Chloe's defiant one, and finally to his brother, who stood silently, solidly, behind his wife. He saw the truth in their eyes. The game was up. This has nothing to do with you, he snarled at Liam. This is between me and her, he gestured dismissively at Chloe. You are wrong, Liam said, his voice quiet but carrying immense weight. She is my wife. Her son is my son. And this is my family. You have nothing here, Ryan. You gave that up a long time ago. You need to leave. It was the first time Liam had ever truly stood up to his older brother. The power dynamic between them shifted, irrevocably, in that one moment. Ryan stared at his brother, a look of utter disbelief on his face. The weak, simple-minded little brother he had always looked down on was suddenly a formidable stranger. Defeated, he turned and walked back to his car, the arrogant swagger gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man who had lost everything and was only just beginning to realise it. He drove away, leaving a profound silence in his wake. In the days that followed, a strange calm settled over Chloe's house. It was the quiet before the final, inevitable storm. Isabella stayed with a friend, initiating divorce proceedings. Chloe and Liam functioned as a team, a true partnership forged in crisis. They consulted lawyers, gathered evidence, and prepared for the fight of their lives. They knew Eleanor wouldn't give up. A woman that obsessed, that venomous, would not simply walk away. The attack came on a Tuesday. The sky was a bright, unforgiving blue. Chloe was in the pickup line at Leo's elementary school, the car filled with the familiar scent of stale goldfish crackers and the sound of Maya babbling in her car seat. She saw Leo emerge from the school doors, his oversized backpack bouncing as he ran toward the car. And then she saw her, Eleanor. She appeared as if from nowhere, her face pale and her eyes wild. She moved with a frightening speed, intercepting Leo before he could reach the car. Come with Grandma, sweetheart, she cooed, her voice a sickly sweet poison. She grabbed his arm, her grip tight. We're going on an adventure. Leo looked terrified, trying to pull away. You're not my grandma. I want my mommy. Chloe flew out of the car, her heart seizing with terror. Let him go, Eleanor, she screamed, running toward them. Other parents in the pickup line stared, windows rolling down, phones emerging. Eleanor ignored her, trying to drag the crying, struggling boy toward her own parked car. You're a bad mother. You don't deserve him. He belongs with his real family, she shrieked, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered, revealing the madness beneath. Chloe reached them, trying to pry Eleanor's fingers from her son's arm. The scene was a nightmare of screaming and crying, a public spectacle of a family imploding. Chloe felt a surge of desperate panic. She was losing. The woman was stronger, fueled by a terrifying obsession. Suddenly, another car door slammed. It was Isabella. She must have been following Eleanor, anticipating a move like this. Without a word, she stepped between Eleanor and the child. A calm, immovable force. Let the boy go, Eleanor, she said, her voice low and commanding. It's over. Eleanor stared at her, her eyes wild with betrayal. You were supposed to be on my side. He was for you. He is not a thing to be given, Isabella said coldly. He is a child, and you are frightening him. Let him go. The standoff lasted only a second, with two women united against her, and the eyes of a dozen strangers upon her. Eleanor's strength finally broke. Her hand fell away from Leo's arm. Chloe snatched her son, pulling him into a fierce embrace, shielding him with her body as he sobbed into her shoulder. Eleanor stood there for a moment, a lost, pathetic figure. The fight had gone out of her. Her face crumpled, and a strange, guttural wail escaped her lips. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and she collapsed onto the pavement. The aftermath was a blur of police reports, concerned teachers, and hushed conversations. Eleanor was hospitalized, her breakdown attributed to a deep-seated psychological disorder that had been festering for years. The war was finally truly over. The lies that had poisoned their family for so long had been lanced, exposed to the light. The wound was deep and painful, but now it could finally begin to heal. Ryan disappeared from their lives, a ghost from a past they could now put behind them. A month later, Liam came home from work with a thick manila envelope. Inside were the official documents. He had legally adopted Leo. As he signed the final page, his hand covering the name of the man who had fathered him, he became, in the eyes of the law and the world, what he had always been in his heart, Leo's father. There was no grand celebration, just a quiet evening at home. Chloe, Liam, Leo, and Maya, and Isabella, who had become a fixture in their lives, a beloved aunt to the children. She was helping Leo with the drawing at the kitchen table, her laughter mingling with his. It was a new kind of family, one not defined by blood, but forged in fire, and built on a foundation of truth, loyalty, and a fierce protective love. Liam wrapped his arms around Chloe from behind as she watched them. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his familiar scent of soap and motor oil, a comfort she had come to cherish. "He's really my son now," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Chloe turned in his arms, her own eyes welling with tears. She looked at this kind, steady man who had stepped into the wreckage of her past and helped her build a beautiful future. She looked at her children, safe and happy. She looked at Isabella, a woman who had lost a husband but found a family. The storm had passed, and in its wake they were left with something stronger, something more real than they had ever had before. They were home, they were safe, and they were finally free. Years passed. The memory of Eleanor and Ryan faded, becoming a cautionary tale whispered late at night, a reminder of the battles they had won. Leo grew into a confident young man who loved his father, Liam, with all his heart. Maya was a bright, fiery spirit, the perfect blend of her parents. Isabella, after years of healing and self-discovery, eventually found a new love, a kind man who adopted a child with her, finally fulfilling her dream of motherhood. Their families remained intertwined, a sprawling, unconventional tapestry woven together by shared history and unbreakable bonds. Chloe sometimes looked at her life, at the peaceful chaos of her home, and marvelled at the journey. She had faced down her worst fears, confronted the ghosts of her past, and had emerged not just intact, but stronger. She learned that a family isn't something you are born into. It's something you build, you fight for, and you protect with everything you have. In the end, Eleanor's monstrous plan backfired in the most spectacular way. The climax wasn't just her public breakdown, it was the moment two women, who should have been rivals, stood together to protect a child. The ultimate plot twist wasn't just that the two brothers shared a son, it was that the brother who was a father by blood meant nothing, while the one who was a father by choice meant everything. Ryan lost his wife, his family, and his reputation. Eleanor lost her mind and her freedom. But Chloe and Liam, they weathered the storm and found a deeper, more honest love on the other side. They built a real family, strengthened by the fire, and even gained a new loyal friend in Isabella. Their story proves that true family isn't about shared DNA. It's about shared love, loyalty, and the courage to protect it at all costs. Thank you so much for joining me on this intense journey. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more tales, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is a stronger bond, blood or choice?